Everybody. Hello everybody. Immigration scams and traps is a topic that I think is important to give it plenty of time to discuss.
I think it's going to be a fun, interesting topic for sure. Maybe not fun for some people, but...
So stick with us. We're going to break it down for you, and we have a lot of good information to share. So immigration scams and traps has always been something that is scary for a lot of people. And who are the big players in this game? Who are the entities or the individuals or the bodies that do most of it, Brian?
Well, you know, there's individuals in the public. There are employers for our employment-based audience. And then there's the government, which is an interesting one because they're out there running their own scams and traps, which I think is a really interesting topic. And who else am I missing, Sam? One's escaping me.
I think there's a lot of combo employers and employees do it. But the unfortunate thing is the victim always so there is some bad players, some bad guys, and the government is trying to catch them, or they are a victim of fraud. But truly, the people damaged the most are the immigrants that come to the U.S. with not a very sophisticated knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's really a sad
I don't blame them. The reason why we have a job is, you know, immigration lawyers, is that immigration is complicated, and I don't expect people to understand all the rules of it, but that's where these bad players come in and they take advantage.
And that's the failure number one, to make a body of an immigration system that is so complex. I was talking to an attorney the other day who is, you know, he's in his, I think, 60s or something, you know. He said, I just took an immigration law class for continuing legal education, and I learned one thing and one thing only: never touch it if you don't do it every day. Yeah. So immigration law is a very complicated area. And here comes immigrants, attend classes, come to work in the U.S. and trying to make maneuvers, getting new employers, going to schools, transferring, and so forth. And then all of a sudden, they get caught in a trap, and they get caught in a scam, and they lose money, they lose their status.
They lose their life and future in the United States because basically they get attached to some fraud or misrepresentation, and that's, in the immigration world, is enough to make you persona non grata in the United States.
Yes. So let's hit the government first.
Yes.
Now, are we going to call that a trap or a scam? What does the government do? What do we call that? So we have a clear definition on.
I think they would formally call it a sting in their terminology, and us lawyers would probably argue that it's some form of entrapment. You know, a scheme so sticky that they lure people into it, and they have no chance of escaping it because the government just sort of drags you into it, kicking and screaming.
There's no question it's an entrapment.
Yeah.
In the sense of English language. Yeah. Now, when you talk about entrapment in the sense of a legal definition, maybe we take a moment to kind of talk about it. It's really entrapment is when the government sets you up to do something bad. And then goes after you for doing it, but the government kind of encourages you to do it. And that entrapment in the criminal law context is unconstitutional. You cannot entrap somebody to commit a crime. But outside criminal law, it is not illegal. And the government is free to entrap people, unfortunately. And we've had situations in immigration law that we've had entrapment, although legal. I'm not sure it's ethical.
Oh, heck no. Well, I'm going to start with University of Northern New Jersey, Sam. I'm going to go slightly out of order. Yes. University of Northern New Jersey was conveniently an alleged university located in Northern New Jersey. And for the benefit of everybody, I'm going to have some stuff to show you about the University of Northern New Jersey here. Let's bring it up here. There it is. That's the former website of the University of Northern New Jersey. And you got to say, Sam, it looks a lot like a website for a college or university.
This university, we're not advertising for this university, so just we're very clear. And this website is down now, so this is the archive.
But they have a full, website. Telling all about the programs they have and all the good things the school can do for you. And they really kind of lured people into the university that way.
And who owns the University of Northern New Jersey?
It's the Department of Homeland Security Investigations. That's the thing. That's the Department of Homeland Security Investigations Division. This is a sting operation created by them, and they basically lured in international students, saying, go to this university, but the university, it had no classes. It was basically, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You won't have to go to classes, and you can stay in the United States.
Pay us some money.
Yeah, pay us some money. Yes, and Sam, they went whole hog on this thing because I have some other great bits from the University of Northern New Jersey. This is a part of an article from the Chronicle of Higher Education, and I'll show you what they have here. There's the website, and there's some social media from the University of Northern New Jersey. This is the LinkedIn page from the University of Northern New Jersey. They have a president. They have a president. Here's a lovely Facebook post about some coffee.
Oh, look at that. There's
the president announcing that the president's mother had died, and people giving their condolences there.
And lastly,
there's a UNNJ couple allegedly got married, and they're posting this out there all over the internet for everybody to see, just sort of adding to their legitimacy.
Yes.
And that's one, Sam, and there's another one out there too. This is the second time they did this, and we'll mention the other one. Farmington, I believe it's Farmington University, or University of Farmington.
Yes.
And funnily enough, I won't bore you guys too much with it, but here's their website, real quick. There it is, a beautiful, nice, slick-looking website. Looks like a college or university, explaining all the programs they had. There's some social media. There's an article from The Guardian in the UK showing some of the social media accounts associated with the college or university. And here's, for the record, I wanted to show this. Here's where that website leads you to now.
This server has been taken online.
And it was owned by Department of Homeland Security Investigations.
So it is.
They wound up. They came up with quite the scheme there, didn't they, Sam?
Yes. So we got two of these universities, and obviously a lot of people get in trouble. People would call the university, and there's a lot of people that really were interested in getting an OPT or a CPT and studying because they were told you can do that. They did not know that these universities were fake universities, paid money, signed up, and some of them later on wanted to kind of get out of it. And the government went after everybody.
Sam, I have a story about the University of Northern New Jersey. Yep. I stumbled across somebody with a University of Northern New Jersey degree at some point. I think in the context of a consultation, somebody had sent me one. And I looked at it, and I looked up, I had never heard of the University of Northern New Jersey, and I stumbled across some of these social media postings, and it was, I'm going to pat myself on the head, Sam. I think I figured out the University of Northern New Jersey problem before the government let loose on it, but it's
very obvious.
Not that obvious. I mean, I sort of went down the rabbit hole.
Very obvious to you?
Well, why is it very obvious to me? Because I'm an immigration attorney, and part of my job is to dig deep into these things. I think all the things we've seen indicated that the government tried to do a very good job of making themselves look like a slick, legitimate institution.
And then they went after everybody for violating their immigration status.
Yeah.
And obviously they went after the brokers because there was a bunch of brokers that were
sending students that way,
connecting through the Indian community. It's basically it's kind of Indian community focused sting operation, and getting fees from the from the applicants to connect them to the universities, and went after those criminally. And then then the government got really excited about this thing, and they were really happy and proud of themselves and they're high-fiving themselves for doing a great job for tricking immigrants that came to this country for the purpose of advancing their families and their education. And what they did, is they went after them. They went after them and they put them in deportation.
They terminate their student status. They basically tagged their status records with fraud in it, and basically essentially told the people, you're toast in the U.S. now, and you ain't ever going to be able to come back to this country.
And put them on lists at the consulates, put them on lists at the customs. They cannot come back to the U.S. and they basically ruined them.
Yeah.
The poor employees struck back.
Yeah.
They were very lucky to came across someone I know, an amazing lawyer. His name is Ira Kurzban, one of the top immigration lawyers in the country. And he filed a class action lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security for entrapping and tricking these people in a way that is completely immoral. And the case had a rough start because it was initially dismissed, but they went to the appeal on appellate to the appeals court, and that's one of the things you guys should remember. The lower court is less reluctant to sometime tell that the government has done something very bad, and sometimes you have to be patient, go through the appellate level. And they went to the appellate level, and the appellate court said, absolutely, this is not right. And it looks like we potentially now have a class action settlement agreement that's not signed yet.
Yeah, this was just published recently, late last week.
Last week, after how many years?
Yeah, that's the most interesting. About 5 years. Over 5 years, these people have been just royally screwed, because the government, came up with a scheme again. High fives all around.
Yes.
And
the settlement is a massive document.
You have your copy there, and I would say the executive summary of this is really the government kind of seems to, not directly, but essentially admit that our scheme is problematic. A
lot of problems with it.
Yeah.
And it will, once it's signed, it will give the class action members, meaning all those who are affected by this immoral action by the government.
Immigration lifelines is what they'll get out of this.
Yeah, they will get 180 days to correct their stay. So it will be in the news soon, and we'll give them 180 days to correct their status and move on, remove anybody's name from the border, clear up all the databases that they've published about these people.
This thing was so big it caused like a diplomatic row between India and the United States. They were they were complaining to the U.S. government. The Indian government was complaining to the U.S. government about it, basically complaining about all the same things in this lawsuit. Well, the point is though, who got in trouble for this? It's the immigrant community. Who went high fives in Champagne? The government agents who set this up.
So what's the moral of the story, Brian? What do people need to learn about what the government did?
Well, they need to learn that if there's immigration trouble, it's going to fall on you, the individual.
You go into that website, and we've showed that website, and it looks very legitimate.
Yeah.
And you get somebody on the other line that you say, you don't have to attend classes. We're all legitimate. We know how to do it right.
Do your homework. Talk to somebody. Talk to an immigration attorney.
Not every immigration attorney would tell you what you would find out.
Yeah.
Not everybody even understand laws around universities and colleges.
Well, the student visa system. The student visa system is weird and strange because it is super in control by the colleges and universities themselves. Those designated school officials at colleges and universities, they wield great power. You know,
they're almost agents of USCIS or Homeland Security or ICE.
ICE, yeah.
And you're trusting them. They taught you to trust them at every university, and now they create a university. It's really a difficult situation for me. But if it's too true to be, if it's different than the norm, stay away from it. It's really hard to give a true advice in this situation, except to say it really is unfair what the government has done in this situation.
Yeah, I think that's going to be on most of these situations. So we're going to talk about some employer fraud as well, Sam.
Employer fraud. Okay, so most employers are ethical.
Yeah.
Most employers want to do the right thing. Some employers are not.
Yeah.
Just like most employees are ethical, most employees want to do the right thing, some employees are not. So OPT fraud.
OPT fraud. I mean, all you get, if you're a lawyer, you know where to look in the right places. You can find tons of stories from the government announcing, here's our great situation we found out. OPT fraud. It's basically the fraudulent employment letters and signed I-983 STEM OPT program descriptions. We'll sign off one of those. You don't have to work. And who gets the penalty? ICE deported students with immigration documents from these companies.
So these companies, they go belly up, they file bankruptcy. They may go after the owner. I mean, sometimes they do go after the owner, and they probably will hire an expensive lawyer. Those guys made a lot of money. They'll hire a lawyer that may cost them, several hundred thousands of dollars in defense cost. And then potentially, not everybody, potentially reach an agreement with the government and pay a lot of money, and then life goes on. You, who received this I-983 and went along, will be deported, thrown out of the country. You have very limited recourse in trying to rebound from something like this.
Yeah.
So OPT fraud by employers with I-983 training program is something that we see a lot of it, and something that we should avoid. The government obviously is on it, and not a good thing.
Yeah.
H1b fraud?
H1b fraud. Those are some classic ones. There's a lot of cases out there of fraudulent H1b projects. Sending out an H1b case where they say, "Oh yes, we definitely have a project for this person," and it's a bunch of baloney.
And sometimes you don't have to have a project. I mean, when it's a legitimate company, say, well, we have multiple projects, especially right now.
Yeah.
You don't really have to pin down a project, but there has been a lot of made up stories. The problem is not that you don't have a project or you have one. The problem is that you lied about it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that goes on. And there's a lot of cases that settled with the government that probably we'll be talking about and continue. I mean, last year we got CloudGen LLC was hit. Ashish Sawani's company was hit in 2020.
Yeah, he's got a couple of them there. Yeah. And I mean, there's more than what's out there, Sam. I mean, these are the ones that they choose to these are the ones that get the press releases that they choose to prosecute. I just had a consultation from somebody maybe about a month ago where basically said, "Yeah, I was here. None of these names names on this list we have in front of me, but I was here on a STEM OPT, and then I got a letter from Department of State or from USCIS or Homeland Security saying my student visa status is terminated due to fraud, and can I come back to the country?"
So let's talk about something that nobody wants to talk about right now that's flying throughout the communities, because I get consulted about it all the time. I'm working remotely from home because of COVID. Can I contract with 2 different companies and bill them 40 hours each? Does that violate my H1B status? Well, if you're H1B, you understand the scenario? It's basically the employer telling the end client that I have an end client for you, but this guy is really serving 2 different. Yeah. There's no H1B violation because obviously you're working at the right location, assuming, and doing the same job description.
Yeah.
The problem is obviously there's a contractual relationship that could be problematic in terms of
fraud by employee. I don't know. Yes. I could argue a material if you're truly working 40 hours. If you're truly working 80 hours a week, I could see there's a potential problem for there. Material change in your H1B. That's a lot of.
Well, if you're salaried, you're salaried.
This is true.
Yeah. But be that as it may, employee fraud.
Yes. So yeah, a fun scenario. I mean, classic timesheet fraud. Somebody starts handing in timesheets to their employer, working on a consulting
and they've
basis.
moved on to a different company.
Yeah.
They've transferred their H1B to a different company. The employer doesn't know. They've moved on. And there's no follow-up, and this employee keeps sending timesheets and receiving pay.
Is it an immigration violation?
No, but it's federal for sure. If you're mailing it across state line to trying to assert that you're on H1B status, definitely there is a potential exposure there.
Yeah, and it's one we've encountered multiple times. It's an employer kind of isn't keeping good track of where the employees are, and they don't realize they keep on paying them and paying them, and eventually it takes them a little while to realize that we haven't gotten paid for this person's services for a while because they're not providing them anymore.
Yeah, wire fraud is the simplest method the federal government goes after people. For anything in which mailed across the state line to collect money based on false pretenses. So that's called wire fraud. Very easy. Once that piece of document, once that email goes from one state to the other state, it becomes a federal case. And if you're providing false information to receive a benefit, monetary benefit, then you're committing something called a wire fraud. And that is a federal felony punishable by maximum of 20 years in jail. And people don't know that. That's the easiest one. Trust me, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I have been on several teams representing a lot of people along with criminal attorneys in immigration fraud cases. And it's the easiest one for the government to do. And it's when the government says, you know what, I don't have to waste my time on this. I can just hit you with wire fraud. So that's the one that we see a lot that you should be aware. Anytime you cross state line with misrepresentation, material misrepresentation, in which you're receiving benefit, for example, fake payroll checks. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that was happening way back. There's a lot less of it happening right now.
And for the record, those don't have immediate, immigration. They're not immediate immigration violations. However, they can have immigration implications. I mean, you say fraud, and I say, oh boy, that's a sort of crime that can get you in serious trouble in the immigration world.
The big one that I have seen, to me, is really upsetting is when I see employers, and again, most employers are good employers, and that's not the majority by any means. I've had some employers I've seen creating a fake H1b approval notice. And then has a tracking number in which the employee can check online, and they can confirm it's approved because there's no name.
Yeah, and how does that? I mean, that's already bad enough as it is. And then they hand somebody this approval notice, and you're showing it all around town, and suddenly you're looks like you're engaged in a fraud, and who does it fall on? Falls upon the individual.
Yes, I mean, of course, with good representation, you should get out of that one, but obviously, it entangles the employee in a situation that's really bad.
Yeah.
We've seen those obviously before. And then obviously the timesheet issue. And then we have fraud.
The public.
By the general public. And that's a big one that you will get a call that says, hi, this is USCIS. You need to pay money. Go to your account right now. Stay on the phone with me. You got to pay me. Here's the information, pay me so much money because 1, 2, 3, or you're in trouble and you have to pay a fee. Somebody, and I'm getting flashback.
Yeah, you have a good yeah.
Somebody I had a client who was called by USCIS, fraudulent call, and said, you must pay right now. And the person said, I don't have any money, but I have gift certificates.
Yeah, the gift cards.
Gift cards, and had him clean up all his gift cards and pay an account some money, and then the phone call. By the time you hang up, the money is gone. And
yeah, and the people who get pulled into these things aren't dumb people, but it's scary when you're getting a call from somebody who says they're immigration, and that's part of our system is so complex and so wacky that people don't really have a good knowledge of how it works. I mean, the number of people I've talked to, Sam, that don't even know how their I-94 works, that most basic immigration document, first thing you taught me day one of being an immigration lawyer, the people who depend on those things don't understand them necessarily,
Yes. One that I've dealt with is when there was a dual fraud on a husband and wife.
Oh, I remember the story. You should tell the story.
Well, I'm going to say only very brief.
Yeah.
So it's very sophisticated because they have the phone number of the husband, the phone number of the wife. They called the wife first. They convinced her to go to a remote location and then when they to meet an officer or something, and then they called the husband to inform him that the wife has been apprehended by immigration, and now she is driving to a remote to be deported out of the country as we speak, and unless he pays a fine. And the guy had the presence of mind to call me on a different line, because he's not supposed to hang up the phone. He's not supposed to talk to anybody. They say, we're watching you from the window. You can't move around. So I got a call from the other phone, and I was told what's going on. I knew it was fraud. So I asked to be put on the call, and they said, well, they don't want to talk to anybody. I said, just put the phone on the phone. And they put the phone on the phone, and I just basically said, you're fraud. You're not immigration. We're going to get you arrested. I'm going to get you, and obviously I've used some choice words that I'm not going to say here on this YouTube presentation.
But
I was very upset.
Scary
I was very upset. I was very upset, and angry, and I said, people like you need to go to jail. I will see to it you will go to jail. Trust me. And the phone terminated, and the wife was able to call, because they were telling the wife, stay on the phone with me, don't go anywhere, so to prevent her from calling her husband. Yeah. They hung up the call with the wife, and they were able to connect, and obviously.
Yeah, and that's just an absolutely crazy scam.
No, it's nuts. How did they get the phone numbers of the husband and wife? I mean, this is sophisticated stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely that. I mean, you told me that story, and it blew my mind. It's a classic. It's a Monday morning Sam. This is a weekend and a Monday morning Sam story. Brian, I'm going to tell you the next story, and I go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was on my weekend when the client called, and I had to kind of intervene and help him out. But unless I was very aggressive and shake the other guy, because the guy said, I'm USC, what USCIS? I said, no, you're not. I know you're not. So
I tried that in the USCIS field office, Sam, once. It didn't work very well.
Be that as it may, fraud is something that we all got to watch out for, and it's unfortunate. I think I see it getting worse and worse every year. I mean, I can go back 10 years ago and tell you that we didn't have those issues. 15 years ago, nothing like that. Nothing. Yeah. There was no fraud issues. Now, the government is on the action, the public is on the action, the employees are on the action, the employers on the action, and the fraud is just all over the place. And you got to be careful, guys out there. Just keep your eyes open. If it's too good to be true, it is.
That's the greatest rule of thumb there. If it doesn't smell right,
have a relationship with counsel. You guys have a long journey here in the U.S. A counsel you trust, have a relationship with them, and be able to reach out to them when you need them. That usually help. Obviously, it's not cheap, but yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I think the students are really the most vulnerable population, and they come to the United States, they are young, and they don't have, the average person I talk to comes on a student visa, doesn't get to talk to an immigration attorney until they're looking to have somebody file an H1b visa for them, as many as like 5 years into the United States.
And not on my presentation sheet, Brian, a very important fraud committed by another group that we haven't talked about. Fraud committed by attorneys. This is huge.
I mean, it's not the employment-based community is not as susceptible to that, but I mean, yeah, that's a classic one.
Yeah, in Ohio, at least, I know 2 attorneys in my career. One took off, left the country permanently, and the other one went to jail for fraud. He went to jail not for fraud on immigration, but they found out he was committing a lot of immigration fraud. Along with another fraudulent activity that landed him in jail, and he lost his license. So, who do you trust? It's really crazy.
Yeah, and I'm afraid I don't have an answer to that.
I mean, people coming from outside the U.S., immigrants, students, all what they need is education, a job. These people are smart. They get their degrees. They get educated. They're coming here to study, and not all of them are innocent. I mean. Another fraud that we've dealt with, and we can go on and on, is testing fraud in foreign countries. Testing fraud is a big problem. Also, I've represented people testing fraud cases.
Oh, here's another one, Sam. We're going to keep on going forever if we don't. But the interview fraud, the employment interview fraud. If you have a project with a company, Send my friend. We've heard of people getting plucked for that at the border when they looked through somebody's phone. They go,
and they found the communication that there's somebody setting one up, you know,
Yeah.
or the TOEFL fraud, the test of English as a foreign language fraud, where you have other people take your test for you, and we've dealt with those issues as well. Listen, everybody has made a mistake. Everybody has made a mistake. But when you come to this country, one of the things I came from the Middle East. You're born and raised in America.
Yeah.
I came from the Middle East. People are listening to us, probably most of them are born in foreign countries. When you come in to the US, it's a different set of systems that we grew up around. Mm-hmm. And the mental and the emotional reset has to happen quick. And if that does not happen quick, we find ourselves in trouble. And that's really, if there's one thing that people need to learn, and when you see friends coming in, newcomers from back home here, one of the things you should tell them is, it's the number one thing that you have to learn. We follow the rules here, and what is funny and normal and okay back home, it is not okay here.
Yeah, you're thinking of the classic,
Interview fraud. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these employers also that commit fraud have come in from other countries and don't have. I mean, some of them are born here in the U.S. Some of them are born from other countries. So I mean, we get a lot of that. But that's our fraud presentation. Hopefully, it's helpful. It's a good discussion item.
It's not a conversation we hear a whole lot. It's an
Yes.
interesting one. We hope to avoid it, but it's
Yes.
one that's interesting to talk about.
Absolutely. We'll be back to talk about your questions, and hopefully we'll answer all of them.
Well, Sam, I think we have some questions ready to go here. If
All
we're
right.
good to go, let's see what we got. We have one here from, let's make it nice and big so I can read it, from Pakala Prasad. It looks like we have a CSPA-related question, always a challenge.
Yes.
So daughter's age locked under CSPA in October 2021, F1 filed in June 2020, got RFV and NOID, responded in time. NOID response received by USCIS on October 15th. And let's see where the rest of it goes.
But reached the officer on December 30th
by when service was canceled.
Should I file an TR for F1 or okay to let it go? So if the daughter filed an I-485, the F1 will not be approved
because of immigrant intent.
Because of the declared immigrant intent, which is inconsistent with the H1 with the F1 visa.
Yeah.
So if she has a pending I-485, she can just use the receipt notice to attend school. The F1 serves no purpose.
Yeah. So
probably you can just let it go or withdraw. Would be our best answer to that one.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, our psychic attorney powers say the filing an F1 case after that adjustment status filing is a recipe for failure, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the next one is from Verma. My company has two offices located, location A and location B. I was working from location A for a team at location A. I'm still at location A, but now work for a team in location B remotely. I'm on H1b direct employment with the employer. Prior date 2016, PERM and I-140 approved. Should I refile PERM and amend H1b?
Okay, there's so much going on here, Sam.
Yes. So H1b, not likely. You do not need it if, obviously, you're working remotely from the other office.
If you're still in the same H1B location, the only things that require H1B amendments are material change.
Yes.
And as long as you're still doing the same work that's in your H1B petition, you haven't changed physical location. There's a good faith argument to make that there's no material change, no H1B amendment required.
Now, for the PERM,
ooh, that PERM.
A temporary change in the job location would be inconsequential. if the permanent job offer is a new location, not covered by the existing perm, and there's a way to cover multiple location usually in the perm filing. So if that's not happened, that could potentially cause an issue.
Yeah.
So there's a language that says travel and or relocation to various unanticipated locations throughout the U.S.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Or something like that in the perm application. If that's there.
So it really depends on how your perm case is drafted, because that job that's in your perm case, only you have to be in that role when you get a green card, and depending on where you are in the process, Robbie, that could be a long time down the road. So really, you only have to be able to take that perm job as described when your green card is issued.
Yes.
So just because you're working on elsewhere on a different project doesn't necessarily mean you have to redo the perm process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I got one here from Sweet Seller.
Sweet Seller, a frequent viewer.
Yes. Talk about the EB1C.
Yes.
For L1A. Can H1b visa holder apply under EB1C if he's transferred to managerial capacity from India to the US and all other criteria met? Well, when you tell me all other criteria met, you kind of answer your own question. But if all other criteria met, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
It is possible for an H1b visa to do that. Obviously, number one, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Now, few things I'd like to point out. Number one, all other criteria met is an elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
Those L1A cases are complex, and so are their EB1 counterparts, which have substantially similar requirements.
Right. And not only that, but here's what I tell people. Their law says must have worked for the foreign entity abroad, or the branch office, whatever, abroad, for a minimum of 1 year out of the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when people say minimum of 1 year, if I say to you, you got the minimum grade to pass, what's that minimum grade to pass?
Yeah.
It's a C. So you had 365 days. Do you meet the letter of the law? Yes. But the letter of the law is not an on-off switch, it's a dimmer. So if you spend 2 years, 3 years, you have stronger case. You spend 1 year, you have a little bit of a marginal.
When I hear that, people have asked me this very question before, Sweet Seller, and when I ask the question, I'd say, well, yeah, it's possible, but why weren't you brought over in L1A the first place? I can't help but wonder if you really meet all the requirements for that L1A case, you know?
Well, I mean, coming here, but I don't have a problem with that one, to be honest with you.
I don't have a problem with it, but it's, it's just something that runs through my mind.
But it doesn't bother me. I mean, hey, listen, I came here on H1B, under EB2. It's crazy 10-year wait. I'm taking I'm taking an opportunity with my employer abroad for 18 months. Don't do it 1 year, 365 days. Do it 1 year. Number one, it has to be, by the way, every day back in the U.S. on visitor visa or whatever, it's subtracted. So I'm going to take an 18 months assignment. I'm going to do a bona fide managerial responsibility job, and then come back here on L1A.
Oh yeah, that's a solution that works, and that's one we've told people before.
And we've some people have left and have done it, but some people have employers don't have branch offices.
Yeah.
But if you are somebody who working in the United States, then you create the branch office for the purpose of creating the job. It doesn't really work very well, because USCIS can kind of see that the company got established a year ago. Just when you started, the company really doesn't have any need to be overseas. You're remotely managing people here. Everything in immigration law has to do with something called the smell test. Yeah. You meet the letter of the law, but are you going to have a sympathetic officer who's going to give it to you? Probably you're going to get some difficulty. Yeah, you got a big branch office overseas, then you have no problem.
Oh yeah, any case, I do. I'm saying, there's the conversation you have with the client that's like, well, you might meet the minimum requirements, but you want to go well beyond the minimum requirements. You want a big, hulking, beefy case versus the one that they can just say, we can deny this because it's on the border and nobody's going to challenge us, and everybody else will pat ourselves on the back for it.
USCIS is willing to approve L1A a lot easier than willing to approve an EB1C.
That's true.
And they have explained that. They were asked on an FAQ one time, you just approved the L1A, but you denied the EB1 case. Why? And their answer is wishy-washy. It doesn't change the fact that that's in fact what they do.
Yeah.
But the answer is, well, our evidentiary standard is a lot higher when we do a green card, meaning that you have to prove a lot more nonsense.
We're giving a lot more away in that EB1 case. We're giving the right to permanent residence versus.
But if it's a bona fide case and you have a true managerial duty and true working overseas for a company that existed for a while, and maybe you put in 18 months to 2 years and came back on L1A, absolutely, I got no problem.
I mean,
with this.
I have no problem with that fundamentally for sure, and they work. I mean, we filed tons of green card cases in October 2020 for EB2s and EB3s, and I can think of one we filed at that time for an EB1, and that person has had his green card for about 6 months right now.
Yeah.
Out of India,
Yes.
for the record. So the process is obviously highly desirable.
Yes.
Yeah. Going to keep on going with the questions. I have one from Prem Singh here. So I-45 is pending for 180 plus days. Furthermore, if one changes employers within 180 days of interfiling TUB from EB3 to EB2, TUB will become invalid or entire 45 application. So it's basically, I think he's talking about the reset of the 180-day portability after you do a transfer of underlying basis, right?
So if you transfer employers within 180 days, TUB does not become invalid. I-485 may become invalid with if you get an RFE, but if you cross the 180 days and USCIS haven't asked any question, then you're fine. We begin with the rule, which is resets the clock. Once we reset the clock, now what we're not talking about the transfer underlying basis, we're talking about your adjustment status.
Yeah.
Simple. This question, would my adjustment status be approved if I transferred less than 180 days to a new employer? That's really the question. USCIS is not going to say, oh, no, we canceled your transfer underlying basis, we send it back. No. They're going to say, if they moved quickly on this and you're now with a different employer, you're no longer with the employer who filed your I-140. You cannot file a supplement J for a new employer for same or similar job classification because you have not met the 180 days. And therefore, God forbid, we're going to deny your adjustment status.
I think that's a reasonable possibility of that happening for sure.
Yeah, but given the fact that the government acts slow, and given the fact that you probably did not jump the new employer when your priority date is very close, maybe you did, then maybe you'll be okay if USCIS does not act within that 180-day window. Because if they act after, then you can file supplement J.
Going to keep on going here with a question from Sweet Seller, and it's a good one about sort of the nuts and bolts of interfiling. If you interfile EB3 to EB2 now, can you interfile EB2 to EB3 later if equations change, where the priority dates are? Is there any restriction on how many times you can interfile?
Well, the answer is clearly no per regulations. You cannot interfile back.
Yeah.
Now, they have opened the door to interfile to a third basis potentially, but not back to your original basis. Now, you could file a new adjustment status on the EB3 in your example, for example. You can file the I-45 and keep going that way, but not using the TUB.
Yeah. You cannot withdraw the interfiling request once it's put in. And ultimately, the whole point of interfiling is move yourself to a category where you're current so they can approve your case. So hopefully that scenario never happens. Really. So that's a scenario that they really try to avoid.
Yes.
So, let me see. Got a question from Pakala Prasad. So my mother's green card is expiring in March 2023. My brother filed her green card initially in 2013. Can I file for her green card renewal? Will she be in status while the renewal is getting processed beyond 2023?
So my mother's green card is expiring in 23. I will ask the very first question, where is your mother? Is she in the US or is she overseas?
Yeah. So
because if your mom is in the US, there's really no need to ask the question to me because it's a simple green card renewal.
yeah. Well, let me sort of expand upon that. You know, your brother filed. It sounds like your brother petitioned on her behalf, filed an I-130 on her behalf in 2013, and she's already a permanent resident. Who files the application for her for a green card renewal? She does. It's her own personal application. Nobody has to file it on her behalf. It's filed in her name, and she just basically tells the government, "Hey, it's been 10 years. Give me a new green card."
All what the green card renewal is a refresh of the picture.
Yeah, it's evidence that you are a permanent resident.
It's not renewal of the permanent residency. I've had guy one time came to me and showed me a green card. This is a long time ago. I was shocked. That green card expired 20 years before. He's been here in the country forever, and he's traveled outside the U.S. and back 20 times on that old expired green card. And USCIS, this is back in the days where there was no paranoia at the border. And USCIS will let him and say, "Hey, renew your green card, man. What's wrong with you?" And then finally we renewed his green card. It is not about the green card. It's about updating the card. The status has nothing to do with the renewal. The status has to do with whether or not your mom is living in the United States permanently or she's living abroad. Because if she's living abroad and not living in the United States beyond 1 year, she probably no longer can travel back to the United States by law if she has more than 1 year outside the U.S., because now she has to apply for a returning resident visa. So that's a different discussion. That's not the question you asked, but I'm just kind of expanding on that.
Yeah, simple version of it is if your mother's here and she's still being a permanent resident, she is a permanent resident even if that green card expires, but putting that in a renewal application ensures that she will have that green card, which is evidence of her permanent residence.
And if she's not here in the U.S., we may need to have a different conversation.
Yeah. So, this is the sort of feedback we appreciate too. Sweet Seller telling us, when we show the website, you're echoing. Is it just me? It may not be just you, Sweet Seller. We appreciate the note, and we will look into it for certain. I have a theory, Sam.
When you show the website, you're echoing. Thank you very much. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our apologies. We are always striving to do better on that front.
Thank you.
To achieve audio perfection.
Yes.
So what will be your next month EB-based March bulletin for EB2?
January, February 2021. I would say
March 2022.
I would say I'm going to say it's very limited movement.
Yeah. Obviously, we generally are out of the visa bulletin prediction business because the Department of State always surprises us. However, what they said, what Charles Oppenheim, who we don't know who his replacement is yet, and I've looked fairly recently, said before he left in December is basically expect to see, some aggressive movement with potential to stop and potentially even retrogress before moving forward again. So it has slowed down, as I recall. It basically only moved about 2 months in the last visa bulletin, EB2, yes. Meaning maybe that's a slowdown.
Yeah, I will be surprised if it jumps anything at all. Maybe very modest movement or no movement.
Their aggressive movement was 6 months, and thereby I expect something less than that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope we're not going to say the R word. We're not going to say it. No, we're not going to say it.
Didn't I already say it, Sam? I thought I said it.
Ah.
Yeah, and there's a prediction for dates of filing and final action in EB2. So, again, not really much movement either way. Remember, the dates for filing are a look forward at final action dates where they think they're going to be in 8 to 12 months. So expect them to move generally in accordance with one another.
Yeah.
Sweet Seller talking about fake USCIS calls here. Does this mean there will be no legit calls from USCIS? Can you elaborate? Sam, let's talk about.
That's a great question.
That's a great question. Yeah.
So I was looking at a case last week.
Yeah.
I was looking at a case last week, and here's what happened. Site visitation. US, obviously COVID. Everybody's calling. Email came from .gov. Follow-up phone call went through issues regarding the details of the H1b compliance, and then there was a 3 months later phone call
from the same officer, right?
From the same officer to the beneficiary. That was a surprise call. The beneficiary wasn't expected. I looked at his phone. It didn't say USCIS. It didn't say anything. It's a number. Took the call. Was asked pertinent questions. And the guy wasn't comfortable providing details, but instead of saying, I'm not comfortable giving detail. I don't know who you are, gave wrong information. The wrong information that was given, in our opinion, is extremely not material to the H1B. When I say material, it's a legal term, meaning that it
Not relevant.
it doesn't really, it should not really, it's inconsequential to the law. Received notice of intent to revoke.
Yeah.
And because the officer knew that this person was lying, well, wasn't telling the truth, wasn't candid, he didn't know who's calling, was surprised, probably down the elevator into the parking lot, getting in the car. I don't know, get a call, gives a quick answer, flip the phone and move on. And obviously, this case can be, we can overcome that,
Yeah.
the case, but it is unnecessary baloney. So what's your advice, Brian, on when you get a call from a USCIS officer that says, I'm a USCIS officer, I have questions to ask you?
So my first thing, well, to answer Sweet Soda's question, yes, there can be legitimate calls from USCIS officers, for example, in the context of an H-1B site visit. And really, it's how do you make sure that's legitimate?
But it's not proper procedure. It's not the proper yeah, it can be, yes, 100%. The proper procedure is to send an email
Yes.
and to introduce yourself and ask for time to call.
Yeah, so I guess, well, that's my answer. If you haven't gotten that email from USCIS, my immediate thing is, ask them to send you an email. They will send you an email from a .gov address, and, emails can be spoofed, but, if you forward that to me as an immigration attorney, it'll probably be pretty easy for me to tell whether you're dealing with a realistic or fake email from the U.S. government.
The proper way to do this, which is probably something that wasn't asked, but we should answer, is to say, I'm sorry, officer, I do not know who you are. Please send me an email. I want to confirm who you are by email so I can check the email account, and then I can talk to you later. That's really the right way to handle it.
That's the way I want to handle it.
And you will not know that these are USCIS officers when you meet them in person. I have been doing this for a long time, and I have met officers in person. I couldn't believe the way they looked. Unshaved, disshuffled, nice people, nice, but I couldn't believe that they're officers.
Yeah, they don't go out. They're not dressed in uniforms like police or anything like that.
Yeah. Drag jeans with holes in it. It's like, what the heck? These are officers? But yeah, that's the way sometimes they dress.
Yeah.
All right. Is it fraudulent to move from visitor visa after 90 days to EB green card? Well, you want to take that one?
So
take that one.
So sounds like you're touching about the 90-day rule. There's a 90-day presumption of fraud for anybody who basically takes action inconsistent with their status in the United States within 90 days of entry. So if you come to the United States on a visitor visa, you are presumed to be coming to the United States as a visitor. And to an employment-based green card, that would be inconsistent with your status as a visitor. You're coming to the U.S. to not immigrate. You're trying to come to the U.S. to visit. And that scenario, though, Sam, I don't know if I can fathom that. An employment-based green card within 90 days, after 90 days of.
So I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah.
First of all, the answer is short. Is it fraudulent? Not necessarily. It depends on the facts. The 90-day has nothing to do with the fraud. Fraud is. What is the moment of fraud in this case? The moment of fraud, if you enter the U.S. on a visitor visa and the officer says, what are you coming here for? This is the moment of fraud or no fraud. That's the moment.
Yeah.
That's the only moment, no other moment. And you say, I'm coming here to Disney, Florida, Statue of Liberty, and you enter the U.S., you're already planning on a job and a green card.
Congratulations,
you just committed fraud.
Yeah.
If you came here as a visitor and you were asked a question and you said Disney, Statue of Liberty, Trump Tower, because I love Trump, and a few other things, and that's really was your intention. And a week later, not 90 days, a week later, somebody knocks at your door and say, you know what? I got a job for you here in the U.S. I say, well, I wasn't coming here. Well, I can talk you into it. Let me show you this. Let me show you that. Okay, maybe, sure. Now, was there fraud? No, there's no fraud. Now, if you apply less than 90 days, there's no fraud in this last scenario I gave you. If you apply after 90 days, there's no fraud in the scenario I told you. The 90 days has nothing to do with whether or not you committed fraud. Whether or not you committed fraud is, did you lie to the officer when you enter the U.S.? Now, what's the 90-day rule is?
That activity, taking activity inconsistent with your status within 90 days of entry is considered a presumption of fraud. So even though in Sam's scenario, a week after you get here, somebody offers you your job, even though you came in on perfectly legitimate purposes, they're going to presume that filing that employment-based green card is fraudulent because you took that action within 90 days of entry. And that can be difficult to overcome.
But you can overcome it.
You can overcome it.
You can overcome it.
I'd rather have your case be easier and just wait past that 90-day period.
Not every case is easy.
Sometimes it's not possible. I'll fully concede that.
Yeah, we're not going to lie. You get the opportunity 2 weeks later. Okay. Now, if you come to me, I say let's file it after 90 days, so we can assume that presumption of fraud. What does the presumption of fraud mean? When you walk into the room, you would rather the room is light, right? The light is on. So that's a presumption there's no fraud. But when you walk in the room and the switch is off, you have to go and turn that switch on. You have to overcome that presumption. That means you have to provide evidence that there was no fraud. That's all.
Well, we have a bit of follow-up here. So actually, it was not planned for. There's your scenario.
So you're going to have to prove the communication before, the communication after. You need a sharp lawyer that can help you through it, and you should have no problem. Yeah. And if you file after 90 days, there's no presumption of fraud. And if you file after 90 days and there was fraud,
you still have a problem.
You still have a problem.
Yeah.
So, but if you file before or after 90 days, you shouldn't have a problem. The question is how to prepare for the documentation will make a difference before and after 90 days.
Executive summary, fraud is a problem.
Fraud is a problem. No fraud is not a problem. The proof, the 90 days is the level of proof that you have to go through.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Follow up there, a question saying, can a pending AOS applicant attend school? Yes, easy answer. I like that one.
Yeah, I like the easy answers.
Yes, I like ones where even I can just say yes and be done with it, Sam.
Yes.
So from Senfax, if we interfile from EB through to EB2 and get laid off within 180 days of interfile, but original I-45 is pending for more than 180 days, does it put the I-45 in danger of denial, or only the upgrade gets denied? I presume you mean interfiling.
So only the interfiling.
Yeah.
So there's no denial regardless, unless USCIS is ready to adjudicate your case between the layoff and day number 179 and 23 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Because once you cross, and I'm hoping that you have an employer, you're fine. You're in the clear.
Well, this scenario, I mean, getting laid off in 180 days of the interfiling request, you can't transfer your underlying basis after, resets 180 days. So the short answer, and I'm going to try to give a short answer, does it put the I-45 in danger of denial? Yes.
Potentially, yes. If they are going to adjudicate your case within that time.
Then they can really look into it and basically.
But if they don't adjudicate your case within that time and you cross the 180 days and you find another job and then they are ready to adjudicate your case, historically it has not been a problem in the way USCIS reviewed those cases. They have not looked at gaps employment during the I-45
Yeah,
stage.
that's the historically they haven't, but in theory it's still a problem if you lose that job offer within 180 days. Historically it has not.
Theoretically, potentially, yes. We haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Would that be something you want to agree on?
I would 100% agree with that. It's something
makes you nervous, but
yes, makes me nervous.
In the last 25 to 30 years I've been doing this,
they haven't really gone.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people go through similar problems.
Here we are. So from Anoop Patel, my case just transferred from NBC to TCS, probably Texas Service Center instead, after almost 1.5 years, but my date is not current under EB3. Should I interfile at this stage? What should I expect from the National Benefits Center? So, should I interfile at this stage? Basically, the first question I ask is, are you eligible? Is your final action date current in EB2? That's my first thing, if it's possible at all. Assuming it is, if your EB3 date is not current and your EB2 date is, it becomes very tempting to interfile. And the further away your EB3 date is from current, the more it seems like a better idea. If you want any chance of seeing a green card in the year 2022, interfiling is what you have to be thinking about. What should you expect from the NBC? More waiting.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Not much. A statement about the Texas Service Center.
Yeah.
Personal experience, because we always are critical of them. And something happened last week that blew me away.
Oh, yeah. I saw this. I saw the email
Saw
exchange
that?
on this. Yeah.
Send an email to the Texas Service Center. Texas Service Center, we replied to an RFE online status, does not look like that you guys have acknowledged the receipt. It took a couple days to get back to me with an email that says, we don't have a record of it. Can you please email us evidence of the filing and the RFE? We had immediately, within less than 60 minutes, attached the request for evidence response and evidence of the FedEx evidence of the delivery to them. Half an hour later says, I see it, I acknowledge it, I have sent it to the officer for review. I reply, say, thank you so much for the prompt response. I really appreciate the good customer service. 30 minutes later, I get an email that says, the officer has approved your case.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything like this.
Emails from real human beings. The email says something like, "Hey, good news! I just saw it's just been approved."
That's the Texas Service Center. I haven't even told the employee. I need to call the beneficiary and tell him that story about his kids. They're not aware. But for me, it's like I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah. So I mean, more or less, a story. You know, they're trying to do a good job out there.
Honestly, there is a major change in attitude and culture, and it's always trickled down. Always comes from the leadership, and people act like they're leaders. And we have now people within USCIS that give a damn. They just released a policy revision last week about STEM graduates and what we're going to do to bring back interest in people to come back to the U.S. The Biden had a 4-point policy proposal, expanding the national interest waiver, expanding the O-1 visa, expanding the OPT list of STEM engineers, and a fourth one that I don't remember, but all of them are very positive in my opinion. All right, 702.
Okay, got just a few more questions.
Take one here, Brian.
Yeah.
Will be our last one.
Okay, so this is a clarification from Sarabi Verma. My question earlier about the perm, this is again the gentleman who basically was working from Site A on a Site B project. My location has not changed, but now I work from the same location, but now work with a team at a different location, same employer. Should I refile perm?
We cannot answer that question unless we read and review your perm document.
Yeah.
If the perm document is drafted in a way that is flexible, the answer would be no. If the perm document is drafted in a way that's narrow, the answer would be yes. So somebody has to look at the perm and answer that question. And also, the second point we were trying to make is that if the change is, number one, it looks like you haven't changed work location, which will even make it less likely that the perm will need to be changed. And it looks like you haven't changed your job description, which makes it even less likely that the perm need to be changed. But unless we review it, we cannot say 100%. But it does not look like it is, but you really need to have a conversation with an attorney that drafted it, or give it to an attorney that can look at it and do a consultation with you to give you a precise, a more to the point answer. Mm-hmm. We'll take one more since this was a clarification.
Yes, yes. There we are. I think that the last other one's a clarification. So here's a shiny new one from Venkata Velaturu.
Sure.
H1b 6-year term completes by November 2022. No recapture period left. My company will file for perm certification by end of February. My wife has approved I-140. Should I transfer to H4 EAD now or wait? A great question. I really like this question. It's a complex one.
For me, it's a bright as the sun. Absolutely transfer to an H4 EAD. Let their employer take their sweet old time. They're going to file for it in February. Not why? I mean, why not file in January? But that's okay, I guess, January 31st. But I would absolutely do an H-4 EAD and get out of H-1B and preserve that time left.
Oh, that's a great. Well, here's a problem with that, Sam. It's going to take them a very, very long time to approve that H-4 EAD, which is why you need to file it now. So I'm going to lay this out the time frame a bit. So it takes.
You have your solution.
No, I'm not sure if I have a solution, but I'm going to explain what the issue is. So. End of February, it takes about 6 months to get a perm approved right now after you file. That's assuming there's no audit. So February, March, April, May, June, July, August, 6 months. You're in August. You're pretty close to your November 22 deadline. So I guess you file that.
And if there's an audit.
If there's an audit, you're toast.
There's another year delay, or 6 months.
Yeah, actually, audits, I'd say probably about 6 months is fair. But, case approved in August, you can file an I-140 with premium processing. You might be able to get that I-140 approved before, November 2022. I think there's a reasonable chance of that. However, if you don't, that's when you're going to really be kicking yourself, wondering, why didn't I file for that H-4 EAD?
Well, no, yeah. But may I add to it?
Well, yeah, I see. So the problem is an H-4 EAD takes so much time to get, and if you're filing that in, I don't know,
now
in October 2022, you're not going to get to that EAD anytime soon. If you're filing it now, you could have that by by November 2022.
Yes. Also, the perm may not be successful.
Yeah.
There could be qualified U.S. workers. I doubt that there will be. I don't know what's your background, but I'm assuming IT and
tight job market in that area.
Yeah, there's a very difficult job market right now. Probably okay, but yeah, 100%. H-4 EAD, H-4 EAD premium processing may be coming on point. Also, just remember that travel and back on H-4, if the embassies open up, could be options for you. So you have options. I would start by completing the H-4 EAD application, putting it in the mail.
Yeah.
The I-765 and the I-539.
Yeah.
With that, we thank you guys for listening to us, and we'll come back next week for